Welcome to the Soft Network podcast. For those of you new to the channel, we aim to be a resource for the soft community, also for veterans and first responders. Specifically, our aim is to be a central place where you can get high-level SMEs when it comes to clinical mental health, but also trying to find unique nonprofits that serve their different communities. Can be a full-time job. And so we're bringing some of those nonprofit leaders in there into our channel and having a discussion of what they do, who they serve, who they don't serve, so that you guys don't have to do all that extra legwork. We also have individuals from the soft community come in, individuals that have unique careers, that have unique perspectives, and have an opportunity to share how they got into the roles that they got into, and what were some of those experiences that really their story. There's so much to glean from them, and there's an opportunity to learn from them. Today's guest is no different. This individual, we started corresponding. Somebody introduced us in an email, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And when I started this channel, he was one of the first people that was on the list. Our schedules couldn't align. And so we finally had the opportunity to do that. And so let me formally introduce him. Robert E. Bradshaw, Commander, Chaplain Corps, U.S. Navy. Commander Bradshaw enlisted into the U.S. Air Force in 1984 and served as both a law enforcement specialist and an imagery interpreter, separating in 1989. In 2001, he was commissioned into U.S. Navy Chaplain Candidate Program and entered active duty in March of 2004. Commander Bradshaw's first assignment was Battalion Chaplain at 2nd Marine Division, serving the 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines, and 5th Battalion, 10th Marines, with deployments to Haiti, Secure Tomorrow, and IRAQI FREEDOM. In 2006, he transferred to Commander Fleet Activities Yokosuka, Japan, at Staff Chaplain. In 2009, he screened and selected for Naval Special Warfare Development Group as Command Chaplain, with numerous non-traditional deployments to Afghanistan, East Africa, the Arabian Peninsula. At the end of 2012, he transferred to the Naval Special Warfare Training Center as the first assigned Command Chaplain. In January of 2016, he was assigned to Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force, Iraq, as Command Chaplain and Senior Soft Chaplain while deployed to Iraq. In February of 2017, he reported to Naval Base Coronado as Supervisory Chaplain. And then in July of 2017, Chaplain Bradshaw was assigned to Deputy Command Chaplain, 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing. And in 2018, he screened and selected for the White House Military Office, where he served 11 months as the Deputy Director for the Chaplain Directorate and 24 months as the Director. In June of 2021, he reported to Marine Recruit Depot, Paris Island, at Recruiting Training Regiment Chaplain. And then in June of 2023, he retired from active duty. I had a blast interviewing Robert. His meekness, his humility really comes through. His desire just to serve and just to minister to the Marines and in the soft community. The bulk of his career just came through. He is a very humble and just a servant heart. And I think this comes through in the interview. And so without further ado, episode 7, Robert Bradshaw. Well, Robert, I appreciate you jumping on again. You're our first repeat guest, unfortunately, but fortunately. And happy Halloween, by the way. We keep landing on these bigger days.
Reformation Day.
That's right, Reformation Day, Halloween. I heard there's about 3 other things that today historically there is. And also, you and I are freezing down here. I think it's in the 50s down in Florida, which I've been here almost 10 years, and this is the first Halloween, I think, that I'm going to legitimately have to have a long sleeve on for. So hopefully you're
Oh,
staying warm.
absolutely. I know how to stay warm.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's jump in. Where'd you grow up?
So as a kid, I moved around a little bit, born in South Carolina and moved to North Carolina, South Carolina. My dad was kind of a fix-it guy for Sears. If it was a broken store, they moved him to go fix it. And then before my 10th birthday, we moved down to Lake Worth, Florida, which is just south of West Palm Beach. And then, so that's where I finished growing up at, in West Palm Beach, Florida.
What was West Palm Beach like back then?
Not nearly as crowded as it is now, and not nearly as expensive. Still a good experience, a neat experience. You know, I got to watch it grow, and this is a great time of year to be down there. You know, October to April, without the humidity, it's beautiful. And so, yeah, we still have some family down there, so we go down there occasionally.
So was it just you and the parents, siblings, and then what was typical rhythm of the house like? Were you guys involved in athletics outside?
Yeah, so same parents, mom and dad were married 39 years before my mom passed away pretty early. And I have two older brothers and then a younger sister. And we're kind of spread out. My oldest brother is 11 years older than I am, and my sister is 5 years younger. So you take that spread out. But yeah, normal rhythm. I guess you don't know what you don't know. I think we were a normal family, you know, probably middle class or somewhere in there. And, you know, school events. I played sports, so that kept my grades up in school in order to play sports. And I'm very active in church growing up, and just played outside a lot. You know, no video games back then. I think Pong came out when I was getting older. But yeah, you played outside till your dad stepped out on the front porch and whistled, and everybody went home. And but yeah, a good growing up.
Now you mentioned church, and obviously you ended up being a chaplain. What was the, you know, I guess, what was the culture in your home? Was it just the very Southern typical culture? Hey, everybody goes to church and it's kind of a social thing, or was it something a little bit more for your family?
Yeah, you know, looking back, I think it's probably a little bit of both. You know, my dad was a deacon, and it was interesting when he would do the prayer, it always turned into King James language, which was funny. I was like looking at my dad up there. My mom was a very private, quiet Christian. She did a lot that we did not know about until her funeral. I mean, she just took care of people. She lived that life. I remember more discussions my mom having with my great uncle, my grandmother's brother. You know, they just had these long discussions and different things. I was a critical little kid, so I would see what the Bible would say, and then we'd go to church, and I wouldn't see the mesh, and I was like, so I would ask older guys, like, you know, what's the difference? I don't see a difference. It's just like you go to church, and then you live like everybody else, and so where's the real? And that kind of sent me on a search. And God took away most of the criticalness as I grew up and matured. But it just became a journey looking for what was real. And then that turned into a little bit of wrestling with God. And then I quit wrestling with God and enjoyed a life of ministry. So it was really good.
You mentioned your mom died young. How old were you when you lost your mom?
I was 26. My mom died of ALS when she was 59, and strangely, my dad died of ALS when he was 78. So, 18 years apart, about 17, 18 years apart, and Duke University wanted to study us as a family. But there's really nothing they can do. You know, fast forward a couple assignments in the military. I was in 2 special duty assignments, and of course they heard the history and they had me checked out, and they were like, hey, we can check and see if you have the gene, and and you can have it, and it may mean you never get it, or you don't have the gene and you could get it. And I was like, so what's the point? And they're like, exactly, go live and, just keep taking care of yourself and doing the best you can. You never know. So I never did any research for me.
No, personal choice, but that's extremely rare that both parents had it. So what was the draw to the military? You're growing up in Florida, normal kid playing sports. How did all that materialize?
Well, so the first draw to the military, really came after I started junior college, and I felt like it was high school over again, doing the general ed stuff. And I was dating my high school sweetheart at the time, and we're still married. We celebrated 40 years of marriage this past June.
Congrats.
And thank you. Yeah. And she deserves a medal. And but growing up in South Florida, I mentioned it's a little pricey and expensive. And I'd like to say I joined the military the first time for altruistic motives, but it was really to go learn a trade and get married. So I just stopped by the recruiter one day, coming back from college, going over to where I worked, and I was like, I got to do something. So I stepped in and asked how I joined. Only the Air Force recruiter was in at the time, and he's like, yeah, just do this. And I'm like, when do I get a job? He said, oh, when you finish training, which was a bad choice. I didn't know enough to ask a question, so I just did that, and that started just shy of 6 years of enlistment. And then I got out and came to UF, University of Florida, to finish school, my wife and I both, and to come here to school. And 14 and a half years after getting out of the Air Force, there's a lot of story in between there, God redirected me back into the Navy as a chaplain. And I didn't know what a chaplain was when I first heard about it. I didn't experience that when I was enlisted all those years.
So what was the draw?
The draw the second time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was we had a men's prayer breakfast at the church where I was a servant in church on staff in Jensen Beach, Florida. And this guy was talking about getting his package approved to go on active duty to be a chaplain. And he was the son-in-law of our chairman of deacons. And I was like, I enjoy my military time. We good camaraderie. There's a lot that I really like about it already, and I didn't have a bad experience. So afterwards, I was talking to him. I remember our senior pastor walks by and goes, "Don't you get interested?" And so I was like, "What's a chaplain?" And he explained to me, and he was going into the Navy chaplaincy, and he actually did, and he retired before I did, and we just visited with them in September when we went to Pensacola for an event. And it just really intrigued me because I loved how he explained the Navy piece, because they were always with their unit. So if their unit went somewhere, they went with them. So you have this kind of embedded ministry without all these pretense walls. I mean, you can't keep up anything fake when you're, day to day in and out with everybody. And that's both sides, both for the chaplain and the people. And I was already kind of doing a weird hybrid anyways in Jensen Beach, because I'm a kind of an outside, as you can tell, I'm a little bit extroverted and I love people. So I just went over to the high school and became the football coach, a football chaplain. And the principal gave me a pass to even visit during the school day. So I'd have lunch with students and go talk to kids who were in trouble. And stuff like that. So I was already doing a hybrid, but I called the Air Force first because that's what I knew. And I think the guy was just whoever I talked to was kind of having a lazy day, but it worked out. It was beautiful how God did it. He's like, "Are you a Catholic priest?" And I'm like, "Nope." He's like, "Well, call back in 3 years." And I'm like, that was weird. And I learned later there's no quotas. It was just he was probably looking for something specific. But I didn't see it as a negative then, and I definitely don't now. But that led to me investigating the Army and the Navy. And the Navy just is how I was wired. I didn't know it. It was that embedded ministry And then what God shaped my time was completely different than most Navy chaplains. So it was all God. Yeah.
What was the coming in? You said you didn't know a lot about chaplaincy and what the program. What's the history of the chaplains in the armed forces?
Oh wow! So for the Navy Chaplain Corps, it's November 28th, 1775, and I always joke with the Marine Corps because theirs is November 10th. And I told them it took them 18 days to figure out they needed chaplains to get them out of Tongue Tavern to go fight wars. But yeah, so naval chaplaincy, and I'm sure the other branches as well, not the Air Force, because they didn't come on until 47, but I'm sure they did a hybrid right over from the Army Air Corps. But I know our history, and so we've been around, and the Marine Corps has really appreciated that, and a lot of us really loved it. We call it being on the green side. So, so that they get it for the most part, and so you don't have to kind of fight for relevancy at the beginning of every tour, and so yeah, we've been around that long. And the beautiful part of what God allowed me to do is I finished seminary. I had to finish seminary in order to come on to active duty, because you have to have a MDiv, a Master of Divinity or equivalent. Okay. And experience. So I already had the experience going, and then I continued through that. And so while in seminary, I was part of the chaplain candidate program, and that's like a non-committal program on both sides. And so you can serve in a kind of a quasi-reserve role. So I would ask for orders in between semesters and around Christmas to do some active duty time to check it out, and they're checking you out as well. And so when you graduate from seminary, if you have all the prerequisites and everything, you're accepted. You can go active duty, you can go reserve, or you can say, hey, thanks for experience, because they're not helping with your finances for school. And so for me, it was great, because we chose to go to seminary in San Diego, which was a multicultural town and city, and very heavy influence military, especially, Navy, Marine Corps. They had other things, but Navy, Marine Corps, it's a lot. So I was able also to kind of volunteer and connect with active duty chaplains to learn more about it. I mean, I was older at the time. So, I went on active duty right before my 40th birthday, which was the timeline back then. And so I wanted to make sure that my thick head was hearing God right.
So you get in, you move through seminary, like you said, kind of a feeling out period for them, and you decide this is what I want to do. Once you get in, where do you go, and then what's the day-to-day like?
So just to show you how supportive my wife is, when we were in Jensen Beach and God was putting this on my heart, I shared it with her, and I said, and she's like, well, how do we do that? And I said, I don't know. I said, if you wanted to be a Navy pharmacist. So she was a pharmacy. And of course, she's, we're in our 30s thinking of this major change. And so it was probably, I forget how long it was from that conversation till we were on a morning walk. And she's like, well, I've been praying about it. Let's do it. So we were both commissioned on the same day, and they commissioned my wife for active duty in Miami. And then she immediately turned around and commissioned me into the chaplain candidate corps, chaplain candidate program. So Cheryl, her first act as an officer was to put me in the Navy, and which was pretty cool. So then we went out to San Diego, where she's in her first assignment and I'm finishing seminary. And it's time for her to move as I'm finishing up in time. And they allowed me to talk to the detailer. A detailer is a person who gives you your assignment. And this was, right after all of 2003 kicked off and everything. And so I got to talk to the detailer, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna see if I can get what I really want, because they were talking about sending Cheryl to Camp Lejeune at the hospital there. And I said, well, I want to go to 2nd Marine Division, I want to go to infantry, and I want to deploy to combat. And the guy said, yes, got it. And I was like, wow, that was easy. And what I didn't realize at the time was not everybody wanted that. So there's people that were not wanting to go. And I don't say that because I think war is good or anything like that, because it's not. There's nothing good about that. I wanted to be in ministry in that setting. And I don't know why God drew me to that at that time. I do now, but at that time, he just drew me to that, and gave both Cheryl and I peace about being deployed to these kind of settings, which turned into almost most of my time as a Navy chaplain. So taking care of warriors in the front line, and then later on in front of the tip of the spear, I don't know, it was just an honor. And there's some real moments in that. A lot of things are just flushed away when you're in those situations. And so it's good. And I learned a lot as well, about me and about others and about God. So it's not always just, everyone else benefits, which I pray they do. But if we're open to what's going on, we learn a lot as well.
You mentioned at the time you weren't exactly sure, what was drawing you to wanting to be a chaplain and go and deploy and be in combat. But you said you inferred later on you think you figured it out. What was that about?
I think it's how I'm wired. And it was the hardest part too, because I actually not only love my wife, I like her. And so being apart is the hardest part. I mean, if I could have taken my wife on deployment, I probably would have. I would ask just to stay. I like the simplicity of life. I know this sounds really weird. There's nothing good about combat, but the simplicity of life, it takes a lot of distractions away. Because even when you come back from a deployment, you're like, you hear people complain about things, and you're just like, really? I didn't shower for how long? And that got better later with different units. You shower every day, but it was just in that aspect. And I think that's just how God wired me. I grew up in sports. I like that team aspect. And those guys, they love their country. Both the Navy SEALs I deployed with and Marines. But it really boiled down to taking care of each other. Do you have my back? Can I trust you? And just some bonds that are formed. Is good. And I think there's a lot of growth in pressure. And so it gave me a chance to grow, and prayerfully, I made an impact on others. That's what I hope my life would be, an impact for others.
So your wife's in the booming metropolis of Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville, North Carolina. If no one's ever been, it's huge. You're deployed. What was some of those early experiences like for you? And what were some of the takeaways?
Well, it's always easier to leave than to be left behind. Because again, simple life when you go forward, because you can't do the things you have to do back home. So that shifts fully loaded on your family, right? For me, it's my wife. For other folks, it's their wife and kids. And they have to do everything because you're gone. So that teamwork as a couple or as a family becomes very difficult. And early on, it was even harder because of lack of communication. We had some satellite phones, and we had one computer drop. And so you could email every once in a while. We had this thing called Moto Mail, which was kind of neat. My wife would type out something on the computer, and it would show up in a little card overseas. I wrote every day back then because it was free to mail when you're deployed. You just, stick it in a box, and sometimes she'd get one every day, and sometimes, she'd get 5 in one day. But and that was just an encouragement. And then I journaled every day, not about the things that you don't talk about, right? Not about, losses, which we had and those things, but just kind of reflecting through that, so that when I came home, I just handed her that and said, you can read this when you want. kind of to see what life was about. And so you just learn that. And, it's some tough times, more so for people back home. It went by my first one was Haiti, and that was just, I joined the unit already deployed. My first combat was Iraq, and I hadn't even been in the Navy a year, and I'm on my second deployment. And but it was 7 months, and it blew by because you're so busy, you're so engaged. It's like 18-hour days. There's no weekends and holidays off. You might do something special, like we were there over Easter, and make sure I'm the chaplain, right? So you want to make sure there's services, but services aren't always on Sunday either, because I may not see everybody on Sunday. So you just go out on a route, and I literally Sunday afternoon would leave, do a ring route, visit all my Marines at their FOBs, and then find my way back around Friday. Saturday, do a reset and do it again. And it was good. It was really good.
Anything that surprised you that you really weren't prepared for, both in the setting of deployment, but also in the job?
Yeah, well, I learned a lot. I had a great supervisory chaplain over there. I actually had 3 battalions that end up coming under regiments. And so in March of, we deployed in January, and in March, I got my own regimental chaplain from back at Lejeune. So someone I met and knew, and he just was really wise about pulling the 3 battalion chaplains offline just for a short period, see how we are. He came to all the memorial services that we would do, which are always smaller because of you're in combat. So it's like a platoon plus. And then he would kind of try to figure out how to have chow with you. So he's just talking through. And I remember telling him one time, I had, there's these little lessons you don't know you're going to learn. And I was like, it's not my job to teach that person how to lead. And he's like, yes, it is. And I was like, wow, they didn't teach me that. But yeah, so a chaplain has a lot of interesting roles. It's hard to answer when someone's like, what do you do all day? And it really is people business. And so I learned a lot about myself. I loved the connection that was made with the battalion. And I had a great battalion, great leadership. A few one-offs, but when you look at a task force of about 1,000 and you have 2 people that are like thorns in your side, that's really good odds. I'll take those odds every day.
Typically, well, I'll just specify on this deployment, how many guys are you, quote unquote, the chaplain for?
About 1,000.
Okay.
And that's so a bit, when you become a task force, it's your battalion plus all your attachments. You get like motor T, platoon, get tanks, combat engineers. My worship leader was a combat engineer, and he was phenomenal. God just gave me a great team. I had a great RP. That's a religious program specialist. He was brand new to the Navy. We both celebrated our first year anniversary in the Navy. He's still in. He's a master chief now, and incredible young man. And it was just a blessing that, and my wife actually was really happy because he was huge, and he was expert both in the rifle and in the pistol. So he was my bodyguard. So she felt good about that.
I bet. So first deployment, second deployment, take me kind of the next step in their military career. So
after Camp Lejeune, I went to Japan, where I was a staff chaplain at the largest, they call it Command Religious Program in the Navy. So huge chapel, lots of tenant commands, lots of counseling. That's where I learned I didn't know God was going to use me to help with marriages. It was just like over and over, and we saw God work. And I was just a tool. I was just a willing participant, and lots of great ministry. Some tough times there, but you know, when you're in a large chapel, with a bunch of chaplains, sometimes that can be interesting. And then there are other lessons that at that time, you know, you feel like it's the end of the world, but when you look back, you see exactly how God shaped the next 15 years easily. And so I'm thankful for hindsight and that and learning. And but yeah, it was beautiful. Ministry was incredible. First year was super busy. We were shorthanded. I did the main morning service. I did the evening service, and every once in a while I did the Filipino service. So I did a lot of prep, a lot of preaching. 2 tenant commands kind of adopted me because I can't sit still. So I'm not going to sit in my office and wait for people if I don't have something. So we call it deck plate. You just went out and met people. And so 2 tenant commands ended up bringing me in as their kind of chaplain. And I did all their training and, briefs and stuff that you would normally do if it was your unit. And that was fun. I had some lifelong friends still to today from that assignment.
How long were you at that post in Japan?
That's 3 years. 3 years. And
is that a typical billet of about 3 years for chaplaincy, or is that specific one 3 years?
So in that time frame, because I think Hegseth is trying to change some link tours for financial reasons, I hear. I don't keep my foot in that world much at all, but so back then, if you were on a ship, it was 2 years. If you were with Marines, it was 30 months. And if you were shore duty, which is a training command or like a base kind of thing, is generally 36 months.
Now, when you're in Japan, are you traveling at all in the South Pacific or just on base? And
so I did have the privilege, and it was my only sea time, which is kind of funny. One of the ships was without a chaplain for about 8 weeks. Actually, about 8, but I did 6 weeks because I know I did 42 days underway. So I have 42 days sea time. And but that CO had asked our CO for a chaplain because they were doing a short underway period. And he gave me the opportunity. And so that was fun. And had a blast, a little captured audience, floating out there, 300 something people is easy. Again, leadership matters. I had a great CO, XO, and a command master chief. So I had full freedom to do my job. So, and a great crew. It was USS Shiloh. We also covered Camp Fuji at the time because the war had been kicked off before that tour. And the Marine Corps wasn't going up there to train as much because they were getting real-time training. And so that's actually where I got the Red Cross message from my dad. I just had reported in, and I get a knock in the middle of the night. And I'm like, already? How did a Marine get in trouble, in the middle of the night? And then I learned what it was like to receive a Red Cross message because I've given a lot of them, but getting one, hey, sir, we need you to come over here and, call your wife. And so, but that's all. It's a major command, very busy. So that's the only 2 little work-related things. Now, my wife and I took advantage of our leave time and being on that side of the world, and we went to China and Thailand, Australia, and Singapore. Awesome. And then got to see Japan. Beautiful country. Our last vacation moment was actually where that tsunami came in. And so fast forward a year and I'm in Afghanistan, and real time, because of the time differences, I'm watching the tsunami hit where we were. It was eerie. And I had a lot of friends that were still out there. And now that was way north of the base, so none of them were immediately affected, but a lot of them went and did some great ministry work from the local folks that were there, and then the ships did a lot of work. They went through a lot, those folks during that time.
Yeah, that was I don't know. I think it gets lost in lost in people's minds, but I can remember being at work and watching it live. And that was just a crazy event to see, what a wall of water can do and just continue to move through a town, a city, and then out into the farmland, and to sit there and recognize, hey, this just isn't like a TV screen. This is happening to somebody. They're running for their lives. It was incredible.
It was eerie, and you could be proud of. And a lot of people they forget this at times. Be proud of the military branches that responded, redirected supplies, and actually a lot of contract employees who are Americans who are stationed over there. I had a friend that was driving van loads and truckloads of stuff up there for months. And it's kind of cool about my only ship experience is when a ship pulls into a country, a port call. Of course, it's nice to get off the ship, see a different culture, but they do community relations projects we call comrails, and the chaplain usually is, if not in charge, is very much involved. And so they had to teach me, again, I've never been on a ship, and they're like, hey, put this volunteer sign up sheet outside your office. And literally, I mean, within 30 minutes, it was booked. Sailors wanting to help do things. We painted a school. We did intramural sports with the Philippine military at their headquarters. And then we read to kids. We redid a school top. It was fun, and it was neat. You see this diversity of folks assigned somewhere, giving to these other folks, and so there's just a lot of good that actually happens that people may not be aware of.
Yeah, no, it's powerful to hear, even from somebody that obviously I work a lot with military individuals and veterans, but yeah, I don't hear a ton of those stories along the way, and so that's really, really encouraging. So you guys are in Japan. What? How did we leave Japan?
So this is where there's some frustration that God turned into gold. So when it comes time to call the detailer, I never got any answers. And so fast forward, the detailer changes, and I'm 4 months. You're supposed to call around in a year out. And now I'm 4 months into that process. And the new detailer calls me and says, why aren't you detailed? And I'm like, I don't know. You're the detailer. Why aren't I? And so he was very kind. I didn't know that someone was trying to do something in the background. It was a very high ranking chaplain that didn't like anyone. So it wasn't special. I wasn't special. He just didn't, he brilliant man, would have gone very far. He just couldn't get out of his own way. And I wish he were different, because he could have led the entire program. I mean, the entire chaplain corps, and done a great job, but he just couldn't get out of his way. And he had some weird trust issues. But God used that. And I didn't know that at the time, because I'm just like, I'm in my second tour trying to figure out what's going to happen to me. And so when I was talking to the detailer, he asked, where do you want to go? And my wife loves San Diego, and I'm happy when she's happy. And I said, you got anything in San Diego? And he named a few things. And again, how I'm wired, I said, do you have anything more challenging? And he goes, well, it's not on the West Coast, it's on the East Coast, and it's this thing called DEVGRU, and I don't know anything about it. You have to call them, and they'll talk to you. And so I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And so I called, and a classmate of mine from chaplain school and a friend, we were both 2nd Marine Division together. So he's in his second tour at DEVGRU. He's the first DEVGRU chaplain. Did a great foundation. And I call him, and he's like, oh yeah, we'll bring you out to screen you. I'm like, what does that mean? He said, well, just trust the process. So I had to fill out a bunch of paperwork. They flew me to Virginia Beach. Again, I'm late in the process. And apparently I screened favorably, because they offered me the job. And I didn't know till many years later that someone was trying to steal that billet, not from Robert. You know, it wasn't personal. They wanted to bill it, and they had a relationship with somebody. And he towed the line and said, no, this is what is going to happen. This is what has been promised. This is the right process. And so I didn't know for years to thank him for that. And so I show up, I didn't read Wikipedia and do all that stuff. I didn't really know where I was going, even after screening. But I just remember asking Tim, that was his name, 2 questions. And he told me, again, that's helped me actually screen, because I didn't ask about cool gear or training or all this other stuff. I just said, hey, do you do ministry? And do you get support to do ministry? Because again, that was my role. I'm not an operator, I'm not a trigger puller. And he's walking me around all this stuff as we're screening. And he's like, you weren't interested in any of that stuff. I'm like, well, that's not my role. It's not my job. And he's like, yep. And that's what got you here. And so it was a good process. Screening there was very front heavy in the psychology world. It may be different now. I've been gone a while, and but a lot of psychological testing, and then you meet with psychologists, and then they tell you, hey, if you get selected, you can ask me about all what you just did. And then there's the physical part, and then the team that you're coming into, which was very small at that time. That's the chaplain RP world. And then they do a panel board. It's always a 06 SEAL that chairs it. The psychologist has a major say, and then a few others. And then, of course, your skill set, the people with your skill set. And so that's how I got to DEVGRU, and it changed the rest of my time in the Navy. It really did. So that one person way back in Japan holding me off really was a blessing. Yeah. Didn't seem like it at the time.
What year was this?
So I got to DEVGRU in October of 2009.
Okay.
Right after Captain Phillips.
Okay. Yeah, just as a civilian, I would say, to echo kind of what you said, it wasn't, I don't even think really until Captain Phillips was there more conversations about SEAL Team 6, what do they do, what do they don't do? And, you know, obviously with the explosion of social media, closer to 2011, 2013, I would say that's when things really, obviously, Osama bin Laden, same rough time period is where things really took off, where people started paying attention. But yeah, that's super interesting. So sorry, I got so many questions, but I'm with you. At that time frame, I don't think a lot of people would have known if they weren't, you know, really into the special operations community and specifically the SEAL community. So you screened. At what point did it hit you what that command was, what they did? And I'm curious, like, what that initial thought and process for you was like, because from what I'm hearing you say, it was just, okay, it's another command, I'm going to go screen. So what was that like for you?
There's a couple of things. So it hit day one on the biggest aspect. And it took a couple of weeks. I didn't know it was going to go into, because, you know, they're the tier 1 elite guys. And I'm like, you know, are these guys going to be arrogant? And I didn't want to be around a bunch of arrogant guys. But that, again, that's where God put me, and it was really cool. And they're not a very few. I mean, there might be a few, but these guys are the most comfortable in who they are, because they are that good at what they do. And so I don't have to tell you they're good, because they are good. The command piece, in the morning, I had my read-ins. So that's when you learn the mission and classifications. And then you realize, well, I can't tell anyone where I work. I can't talk about where I work. And then I went to a retirement later that morning with the chaplain I'm replacing. And we're standing there it's in the boat barn, and the CMC that's retiring is telling war stories. And, you know, when I say war stories, maybe a better term is with sea stories, you know, the camaraderie, the fun and all that stuff. But in there's some things I'm thinking, I'm not sure he was supposed to say that. And so I look over at the chaplain I'm replacing, and I'm like, and he goes, I think you're figuring out where you're at. Because it really is in the retirement, because everyone comes to retirement so you can see. And then there's a few people in like dress blues, and you look at the medals that kind of go over their chest, and you see like E6 or a chief, it's got a silver star or a bronze star with a V, and they don't care about any of that. That's the beautiful part. As you learn, it's a meritocracy. I probably got there too soon, but thankfully God kept me in the community for a while, because it really is do your job and do it well. And you have rank because of different things, but that's not the most important piece in the whole cog. You do respect that. Usually everyone was almost like first names up to about 05. And then, the 06, the COs and the deputy commanders, definitely like sir. But it was a unique place, but it takes everything. I mean, you're as someone I never got to meet, but has a amazing story there. Tommy Valentine, who's a strong believer as well. All in all the time was his saying, and that's true. You are there, and they you're on a 1 hour recall. So those tunnels in the Hampton Roads, I didn't go through those tunnels unless I had a backup plan, because that could cost you too much time. So I didn't get to enjoy Hampton Roads a ton, but it didn't matter. I loved what I did and the job.
Once you got to DEVGRU, and maybe were there for a little while, looking back, what were some of the things that, looking back, prepared you to be successful or to do your job there?
I think one, I was older, and I'm prior enlisted. I know I'm not all that. So, I just took it at face value. You got to do your job, and they have a lot of resources. So when you do your job and you have the resources to do it, and the thing there is learning to speak their language, and that's in every assignment. So in the Navy, you have subs, planes. I mean, everything. You got to learn different language. And Naval Special Warfare is the same, but then at DEVGRU, it's still a little different than the rest of the teams. And so if you wanted to start a program, which the previous chaplain had started marriage retreats and really did a great job, and we just built upon that and blew it up and did 2.0 as well. And we started a daddy-daughter event on the Spirit of Norfolk, like a little dance time. It was really cool to see these operators with their daughters just kind of grabbing them by the finger and owning the day. And then we did a father-son retreat. Now, 2 of those things were launched in the middle of Extortion 17 aftermath, which was also a place that gave us a little break from all the other things that were going on. They didn't want to keep. They were worried about me. They're like, chaps, we can delay these. I'm like, no, we need these as a command, and I need this. It's a different focus. And had great support to get those things done from even outside the command because of traveling so much. But yeah, it's you get to do ministry there. And I've heard a few people, strangely, when I was at the White House, I was on the screening panel for Camp David Chaplain because I supervised the Camp David Chaplain. And we had one guy, and he's like, well, I screened at DEVGRU, but I didn't screen favorably, but I hear you can't do ministry there. And I'm like, really? And the Camp David chaplain looks at me, and I'm like, don't say nothing. Just don't say anything. And I think the key is you have to be okay with being rejected there, which is a different experience. Because when you're with a Marine unit who's used to having chaplains since 1775, you go in with 100% trust. And you lose it if you're a dirtbag or you don't suffer with them. Like if they go to the field and your home is right outside of base, go to the field, don't go home. They're in the field, go in the field. And so you have to be a part of the unit. at DEVGRU because I was the second guy. And now the Army had done, I don't want to take away from it, the Army had done a great job of covering them downrange for years. That's what they were used to. So, now they're getting used to this person with them all the time, right? Traveling on the plane with them, being at home with them, being in weird spots with them. And so you have to earn that trust. And you have to be patient. I had one guy test me. I mean, it was after a bad incident. We just lost a SEAL and 2 Rangers and 2 different ops. And so I went and took care of that, came back to the FOB. One of the best friends of the SEAL we lost, we ended up in the same sleeping area, and he was just mad. I get it. This was one of his best friends. He's like, "What are you here for? You a spy? You going back and telling the command?" And he was giving me, if I'd have been 20 years different, that would have probably just broke me. Mm-hmm. But I was like, apparently you don't know who me. I just took it that way. And so he's like, "Do you know what we do for a living?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you shoot bad guys in the face." And he looks at me and I'm like, I said, he's like, "Why are you here?" I said, "To protect your heart. I don't want your heart to become hard, and I don't want it to become full of hate." Mm-hmm. I said, you're probably married. You got a ring on your hand. And he's like, "Well, no one's ever going to talk to you." And we went on for hours. It was kind of interesting. And at the end, I was like, "I'm sorry, no one's ever going to talk to me, but I'll pray for it." And I named his wife and his 3 girls. And he looks at me and he tells me to shut the F up. And he goes to bed. If you can't handle that, you're not going to make it. And and he and I never became best friends, and he really never talked to me out in public, but he always affirmed my ministry in the times where it was a major group. Mm-hmm. So if there was a loss, or we did an event back in Virginia Beach, I'd get a real hit, slap on the back, a nod, and a walk off. And but yeah, we won that guy over that night, and that's what you have to be in the long haul, and you also can never make it about yourself. If it's about you, they'll sniff that out just like they would a SEAL. If they got someone they didn't want and they just thought that person was there for all the eye candy and the accolades, same thing. They sniff fake out. Yeah. And so I'm not saying the chaplain that said that is fake. It may be a different spot in life that he wasn't ready. The one who told that guy you can't do ministry there, I actually know who the person is. I actually like them. I just think it wasn't a good fit.
What do you think? I mean, I have my own opinions, and obviously I work with some of these individuals clinically and through the nonprofit. But from your perspective, what do you think it is that makes them so good at sniffing out people that aren't there for the right reasons or the right heart motives?
It's funny. I read something recently where they were talking about doing research on these elite warriors, just like elite athletes, or you got a brain that works in the financial world, and you're around them, you can tell they can't turn their brain off because they probably dream dollar signs, and that's the guy you want to trust. I really think a lot of, and this is what I would tell them. This is your DNA. You're not special. You're where you belong. God has given you these gifts, talents, and abilities, and I think they liked that I talked to them like that. Mm. One of my COs used to call me the wolf whisperer. He's like, you can talk to these guys. And then you hear some podcasts, like one of my good friends, I was a chaplain twice. He's like, we're like wolves with table manners. It's kind of, when he said that, I thought, well, that's kind of funny. But yeah. And again, the majority and the most part, in my experience, I mean, these guys did some amazing stuff with restraint even. There's a Somali pirate thing where they killed all the hostages. And my guys were right there. And man, the restraint they showed was incredible. I'm not sure I could have shown it. You know, that's what I told my boss. I was like, literally told him, I said, these men have incredible, there's something in there, right? They're really good at what they do. And that's why you said, why can they sniff it out? I really think they're being good stewards of what they have. It's nice to see. And the humor is great. They have some great humor.
Yeah, I think without the humor, the intensity of the mission, of the setting, I think it would be too much. I think it's got to be, that's why you have such dark humor and jabbing at each other, is to balance out, that pressure, for sure.
Yeah.
What's if there is a difference, I'd love to hear about it. Obviously, they're, as you said, in the front of the tip of the spear. What's and this may sound a little weird to some people, but what's the spiritual atmosphere at a place like that versus your previous unit and your first deployment? Is there a difference in because of what they do and how often? I'm just curious if, as an outsider, we're like, oh, there's a big difference, but having lived in both worlds, and specifically in your expertise and faith, I'm just curious if there is anything different.
Yeah. So being a tier 1 organization, they've already been in the other SEAL teams, right? And so they have to go through selection and assessment, which 50% at that time, 50% of those did not make it. So there's been some life lived. The hard part about being in a Marine infantry unit is the majority, the vast majority, are 22 and below. So some of the differences is just life experience and maturity. And I don't mean they're immature. I'm just talking about, you've already had some rocky roads. You've won some battles with your marriage. You've got through some things. So that plays a little different. But then you take that drive. So here's where some of the differences. You take that drive as someone who's in a tier 1 where they've said, here, I'm going to raise my hand and be screened again and maybe have failure. They're dialed in. So if they're in the Jeeps and lifting them, they know exactly what to do, right? They got that. If they're in the motorcycles, so if faith is part of their life, they're investigating that. And the conversations were deep. They weren't like Sunday school, and I'm not against Sunday school. But as a kid, sometimes whatever the teacher asks is like, and who's that? Oh, Jesus. These guys are like, hey, I was reading this. This sounds like a contradiction to this. Why is that not a conflict? Why is it not a contradiction? How does this fit if this is supposed to fit? Or even harder, you're at a fire pit and it's like, okay, chaps, why did God let so-and-so die tonight? And I don't need to hear it was his time. I need to figure out. And so you don't always have the answer either, because I don't always have, I don't have the mind of God in his exact sovereignty and step by step. But if you're in that moment and they're trusting you being honest as well. Well, let's look at that. I don't have a canned answer for you. And so the depth of that, even talking to some leaders, like troop commanders, who'd be like a platoon commander in the regular teams, and they would tell me they didn't worry about the guys who had a faith foundation, because if they got off the compass, they knew how to get back. He said, the few that I have no foundation, they scare me, because I don't know if they get off, if they know where to get back to. So it's still like life in any job. It's got people who are of faith, people who aren't, but the ones who are usually take it very seriously. And then, like Adam Brown's death, that was my first loss at DEVGRU. His troop really took that, because Adam was one of our most outspoken believers, and he was very helpful in getting the the chaplain ingrained into the overseas aspect. People don't know that and don't give him a lot of credit, but I talked to his dad about that. I'm like, your son is the one that broke through some walls for us. Wow. Before I got there. So now you take all these guys that were trying to figure out why God would have let Adam die. And then that was March of 2010. And then all of those guys get killed in August of 2011. That is an interesting time. And then looking back on it, you see where God used that to bring some people to faith for the first time, to bring some people back to what they believed, and some people still searching. And again, in that loss, we had people from multiple faith groups. And our job as a chaplain is to make sure they get what their faith group. So we got it all across the world. Not just me. I had like 25 different people help me out with Extortion 17. Chaplains, chaplain assistants, religious program specialists, all over the world. And so faith plays a big part. And if some people watch some of the interviews that some of the SEALs are doing on Resilient or Sean Ryan or a few GBRS or something, some of the guys wouldn't talk to me, and I won't tell you which ones. Some of them wouldn't sit down with me for anything, right? They weren't ready. And when I hear their testimony, I'm like, yes, they finally got it. And they tell some interesting stories of what combat did to bring them to that. And again, that goes back to, as the chaplain, you have to trust God in the process. You're not a salesperson. You don't push. You live and you do your best with God's strength to model it as well, because they test that too. They'll watch your life carefully to see how you respond. When you make a mistake, what do? Do you own it? Do you apologize? Ask for forgiveness. All those things. They're looking at that. And so it was a tiring, hard, efficient, and addictive place to work. It was, yeah.
I want to hit on a couple of things before we transition. You mentioned Adam, and then I'd love to, let's just start there. What was your relationship with Adam before the loss? Were you close with him? You mentioned, he was an outspoken Christian, or was this just somebody that you saw, in the day-to-day and knew, wow, that guy's really living a life for Christ?
For me, I only met him once, and it was at a Christmas party. And so all the things I learned about Adam, I learned through his death. I was introduced to him as a solid believer, and he was getting ready to deploy. And one of his best friends was one of the first people that welcomed me at the command when this other squadron came back, and the XO's like, hey, he opens the team room door and goes, this is your new chaplain. And all these dudes with beards, and they're all huge, turn around, look at me, and I'm like, man, this is awkward. So I just waved, walked out, and then this one guy runs out and he shakes my hand. He's like, hey, welcome, and if you need anything, let me know. And that, it was cool. God did that in every one of the squadrons. At least one or two people opened the door for ministry to be done. And I didn't know this guy at the time, but his wife is amazing. They went to a Christian school in Ohio, and he was best friends with Adam. So he made sure he introduced me to Adam at the Christmas party, or I would have never met him. The beautiful thing there, I learned, was when we got recalled for Adam's death, we all get notification on our pager to go to work. And then the pagers turned into cell phones. So that was the end of the pagers, I think. And, but I'm sitting at a table, and this guy I respect is across the table, and he's like, hey, we ought to get chaplain so-and-so, the former chaplain, to do this. And I'm like, now in my own skin, I'm like, dude, I am sitting right here, but I didn't react, and I'm grateful. I had one of those wise moments, and I'm not always that wise. So when everyone left, I went over and said, why would you say that? And he said, oh, they knew each other really well. They had done a CACO call, a casualty call together. And so he knows his widow and all this. Now, I did the notification and stuff with how we did it. So I went to my CSO and I was like, hey, I think so-and-so's right. We need to bring that chaplain back, which means we got to get permission. He goes, we can't keep doing this. And I'm like, no, sir, I'm brand new. I've had one quick deployment. And so I checked in and deployed over Christmas and came back right before Adam got killed. So I was gone that whole time. Mm-hmm. And so they said yes. And I didn't realize that bought me a lot of real estate and respect with that squadron. I didn't know that, but it was all because another leader was patient enough to share with me why he thought that was a good idea. Mm-hmm. Now, I still went to Arkansas, and this chaplain is in the book, you know, when they show in Fearless, and they show the picture of the casket, and everyone's like, oh, is that you? And I'm like, nope. I was a chaplain, but that's a different guy taking care of the hometown stuff. And then I did the command thing, and it was really a blessing that the command allowed me to do that because it was right. He had that relationship, and they have the funding, so you can't always do that, and that's what's unfortunate. And I learned that also, that I didn't share a ton of stories with my buddies who were in financially harder commands, because you know we're doing marriage retreats, and you know I'm going overseas all the time, and then we're able to do something special like that. But if you can, you do it, and it really I'm sure it was a blessing to the family, which I got to know, and then from there on carried it out. But yeah, that's my Adam piece. But Adam really I learned a lot about what he did downrange, how he led, and he loved hard. I mean, it left a hole in that part of the command. And then just watching the family, he loved his wife, loved his kids, and they all do. But I mean, it was just like intense. But it's good to know that they're doing well. I keep up with them as I can, and his kids are grown, and so it's pretty neat.
Where were you, and what was the experience like learning about Neptune Sphere and UBL?
So I had just gotten back from Afghanistan. I tell you, the commander's really good at being quiet when it's time to be quiet, for sure, because I didn't even know which group did it until I knew. So right after it happened, of course, you know, we celebrated, and how do we celebrate? I think we went, yeah. I mean, that's about it. But I'm sure the guys might have done something different. But then you start learning and hearing things, and then all of a sudden you got trips, you know, being done, and I think Panetta came down at the time. But yeah, it was again quite professionals. Not all, you know, there's people who like to write books, and two that wrote books out of that without permission. But it was cool to be a part of that, and I'm sure it helped that promotion that year easier. I think my record would have gone really well, but when Neptune Sphere thing happened on May 1st and my promotion board met on May 8th, now everyone on the board knows where I'm at, right?
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with it, other than, you know, I knew the guys, and you know, I worked with some of them, and but yeah, it was very quiet, as it should be. And then it got out because some people up in DC said a few things about the command, and that caused some issues for families, and people didn't realize that. I mean, there's a reason those things are quiet. And now if you take out the number one high value target, right? Not everybody in the world's happy about that. And then you dime out the command. Now you've got to let schools know, you know, to be on the alert. It's those rules are in there, not just what some people think, to be cool. There's rules in there for real reasons. Yeah. And so we had to navigate that for a while, of just the frustration of those guys being outed in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, from the outside, I felt like obviously I mentioned the Captain's Phillips, but then UBL that was like the big, if you want to say from a public standpoint, coming out period where everybody kind of knew, okay, what that command is, what they do, so on and so forth. And from a high to obviously probably one of the worst lows. Take me through how you found out and where you were at when extortion happened.
So at that time, I normally would have been in Afghanistan, but I talked to the command if I could come out a week later because it was my in-laws' 50th wedding anniversary, and we were going to celebrate in Orlando. And so we were coming out of the restaurant, and my phone just blew up, and I was like, okay. So I answer it. They're like, you need to get back like now. And so this was later in the evening, and they got me on the very first flight. I think I was at the airport at 4 a.m. I don't know. I know something's bad. I don't know what it is because the command follows rules, and a lot of people don't realize that, but they're not even going to tell me on a phone. They're just like, you got to get back. And I had a reservist that had just checked in, reserve chaplain, former Navy SEAL. So kind of odd.
Wow.
And so I just called him and said, go to work. And he goes, well, I just got off a run and I'm sweaty. I'm like, they don't care. It's not about being in uniform. You just need to go to this location. And they sent another one of my good friends from another NSW command there in Little Creek. They sent him over as well. I'm trying to remember who all responded that immediately. I think it was just those two. It grew after that. But I get back. In the layover in Atlanta, I'm going through websites. I kind of know that leak information, unfortunately. You kind of learn those things. Mm-hmm. So now I know it's a helicopter. That's all. The only thing I figure out is a helicopter. So I'm like, okay, that's bad. That's like a half a troop. And so then I get back to the command, and I was really close with this troop, by the way, and some people knew it. And so the guy that I go into, and I still, he now runs a SEAL museum in Fort Pierce, and I'm one of the volunteer chaplains. So we're still together after all these years. But he hands me the list, and he doesn't say anything to me. And I read it, and I can't stay in the room. We had turned a multi-purpose room into it looked like a jock downrange, computers everywhere. So I go to my office, and I just sit down, and then I basically break. I'm reading this list, and I know all the ones that belong to us. I didn't know the air crew. I did know some of the Air Force guys that we always had PJs and CCT and different things. And I'm human. I'm natural. I'm balling. And it was funny because I'm on my knee, and I didn't hear a voice or anything, but the SEAL, the Master Chief that was a troop chief, he was bigger than life as well. Great guy, Lou. And I don't know, it was like I could hear him say, get up and do us well. And I didn't hear that, but it was just kind of like, as I'm looking at the list, get up and do us well. And so I just went to work. And I got 5 guys from the Army, which was helpful because they knew my guys. We moved 1 guy from Iraq into Afghanistan, deployed 2 others. All of this, I'm a 3rd tour chaplain, but I had these 2 Army chaplains who both were 06s, both were very gracious men, called me immediately. It was like, how are you? Let me pray for you. What do you need? Both of them. It was like, are y'all reading a script? Does the Army have that script or something? Deep down, I'm thinking, yeah, I really would like you to take this all away from me, because this is too much. But that's when they asked, what do you need? They said, you're the chaplain. You're there. You know these guys. You're on the ground in this epicenter here. What do you need? And everything I asked for, they gave me. The Navy some chaplains got upset with me because I didn't use them. I had to clean that up later, and that's a little bit. I own part of that because when I got there, I didn't do the normal go visit all the 06s. That's tradition. You put on your dress blues. You go tell someone, hey, I'm new here. I just went to work. So that's on me. But they also didn't know that I had all the support already from people who are already read in. and people who knew them. So like my supervisory chaplain from California came out. He actually did lose wedding way back in the day because he had served in the community and had a great reputation in the community. So I'm like, why wouldn't you use this guy? He knows people. Yeah. He's solid, and he's not going to cause any issues. And he's my supervisor. Like, I'm gonna tell him no, but it was a great blessing. Him, and of course, my good friend from over at Little Creek, 5 Army chaplains, and then that kind of started dwindling some. The Little Creek chaplain, he was at Group 4, the boat teams. He and his RP stayed with us the longest, and then we're pretty much, when we get together, he's one of the few people you can talk to and make sense without talking about things you're not supposed to talk about. You can just, we spent about 5 hours in May together in Virginia Beach. Our travels overlapped, and it was just a blessing. He's in Okinawa now, so I hate the time change. I'm not going to get to talk to him as much, but yeah, I was really blessed with people that didn't care if they got credit. No one was looking for credit, and there was some outside of us that were, and some SEALs took care of that. That was the pretty part. I didn't have to do it. This SEALs kind of crushed some folks that were looking for some limelight. Yeah, it was just people doing what they were supposed to do for the right reason.
Now you guys have.
Sorry, I'm shaking it.
No,
I'm cold.
You're good. I'm with you. That's why I got the sweater on. You guys have, the command, has this massive loss. You guys have funerals lined up. I imagine you guys are stacking up funerals and setting all that up. As you guys get into that, what is that process like? Well, let me back up. Were the spouses and the families, were you a part of delivering that news, or had that already gone out by the time you got back?
Yeah, so just in those short hours, I didn't do any notifications on this one, and I'm not sure if that helped, because it's very hard when you're a part of that first message because they see you as part of that.
Yeah.
My reserve chaplain and the Group 4, the special boat guy chaplain, they did go do notifications. We had quite a few pregnancies and some near the end, and so those are the ones we made sure we could resource from us. But when you have so many, a lot of the notifications were done by regional CACO calls. But we still had enough like chiefs and above in our command that were both SEAL and support. Again, we talk a lot about the SEALs, but the support there, the direct support and the combat service support folks like me, but all of it, they're all the best of their jobs, and so amazing. That's how you can do something like this. You just have all these people that they know they come there, they're going to get their worst evaluation they ever going to have in the Navy on their first one, because everyone there, you got to work your way through being rated higher. But it's major professionals, unsung heroes. Many of them no one will ever know their names or anything, but their families, the families of our fallen do, because we got them there. They walked them through everything, stayed there. We had to call Utah and get a chaplain from Hill Air Force Base to do a notification. And it was so beautiful. He didn't ask any questions about who are you, what do you, it was just like, I need to call my boss to see if I can support this. And immediately called back, went down and took care of that family. Later on, he's one of the first chaplains that the Air Force brought into their AFSOC. Air Force, and it was so happy. I used to teach at Joint, what was it called? It was the JSAL, Joint Special Operations University. And I walk in to teach, and there he is sitting in the room, and I'm like, man, this is what right looks like. Because again, he wasn't about, a lot of times we in that world that stay in that world, people are like, well, you think you're better. No, it's just we're there. And we think actually far less of ourselves, actually, because if you thought about yourself a lot, they would just get rid of you, because that's not the world they want. And yeah, it was really good. And that Group 4 chaplain did. I can't give him enough credit for, walking through everything, because he had to make a lot of those initial calls, because I'm in the air to come back home. So he's calling to get all of this stuff lined up, and then he goes and does one himself, and then we all kind of get back. But yeah, funeral after funeral. I wasn't a part of all of them. I did a majority. If they had a priest or a pastor, or we had one Buddhist, so if we had a monk, and we got all of those things. If they had someone that would do that, we would just go support it as a presence, but they would do that. But yeah, I forgot how to sleep during that time. I mean, literally, I went to Afghanistan to learn how to sleep again, to bring that squadron back. I went over to finish up their deployment, brought them back. I stayed home a few weeks, and then deployed with the next squadron for Christmas. So yeah, a lot of miles during that time.
When you say learn how to sleep again, I mean, I'm assuming quite literally, like just from the shock and, all the funerals and the loss and the mourning, just that was the reset.
Well, when you're planning all these funerals, and you're writing out a different script for every one of them, because every one of them are different. And then you have, you're planning events. I had a marriage retreat. I had a father-son event. I had a daddy-daughter event, which were all wonderful. The marriage retreat was in the middle of a hurricane. So it got everyone who had mandatory evacuated. They were up in Great Wolf Lodge of Williamsburg, which was next to a hospital with a generator. So we had power. So it all worked out. What a lot of command members don't know is, going back to that Japan thing with that guy that was just after everybody, he had created enough angst that my name was in some paperwork. So this is the hardest part of Extortion 17 that a lot of people don't know about is, so on Friday, I get this message, come back, you lost all these guys, and now you're working through, and Monday, the promotion results come out. Again, back to Bin Laden, right? So my name's not on the list, and I'm like, oh, wow, okay, I guess my time in the chaplain corps is over. But I get a call from Navy Personnel Command and says, hey, your record's been flagged, but it's nothing major. just address this one little issue. Well, he doesn't know I just lost all these guys, and I have so many days to address this issue, So the command asked for extension, and I told him no, I needed to get it out of my head. Well, I wrote probably a 4-page something, and the guy calls me and goes, hey, if half this stuff is true, you have a grievance. I'm not saying you're lying, but do you want to fight 06s, or do you want to be promoted? Just answer this question. And I was like, okay, that's the easy question to answer. I said, do I need a letter of recommendation from anyone? I just met the president, the CNO, and because this event through, and he's like, Chaplain Bradshaw, please don't do that to me. He goes, if you get one or two, yours is the least worry I have out of the 87 flag. You can be flagged for anything, and you miss paperwork. Something's not annotated correctly. Mine was nothing major, but it's sure when you have all this loss, and then all your friends are calling you Monday going, man, I can't believe you didn't get selected, but you did. And it's a little embarrassing because, I'm flagged and they don't know if it's something egregious, right? You did something horribly wrong, but I would have never screened a DEVGRU. I mean, they dive in, I had to sit again with another investigator because my clearance level went up when I went there. So you got to go through all that. So it all came out in the wash and was perfect, but it was just a weird timing. And, you don't tell the command that's grieving, hey, I'm mad on another level, right? So I was dealing with a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I went to our doc, who is a former Navy SEAL, and now he's a medical doctor, Doc Hickey, amazing man. Unfortunately passed away a couple years ago, young, but just amazing guy. And I said, Doc, I can't sleep. I literally lay down and 10 minutes later, I'm wired. I mean, I just pass out. I said, I passed out in Tennessee in my dress blues, just sitting in the hotel room waiting for lunch. And then I was up for the next whatever, flying here and there. I did a funeral in DC and had an earthquake that cracked the church, and popcorn was coming off onto our uniforms. And I just remember the only two people who didn't move were me and the former squadron CO who was doing the eulogy. He's standing and I'm sitting, and we're just like looking at each other like, really? And the guy that picked me up, and I took a shower at his apartment. He was part of our command, but he was up there for something, and takes me back to the airport. And then months later, he's like, hey, Chaps, you remember me? And I'm like, dude, I've never met you. He's like, you took a shower at my apartment. And I'm like, oh, you're that guy. Yeah. Now he had shaved his beard and, looked a little different, but it was a exhausting time. And when I landed in Afghanistan to bring him back, I think I slept for 11 hours. And in fact, I think some of the guys outside were circling, like, is Chaps okay? He's been in there a long time. And I woke refreshed and I got back on schedule. But that was a tough time. By the grace of God, through tons of help, and just realizing I don't have it. Those are one of those things where you learn to lean on God because you don't have that on your own. So it was a good lesson as well.
How soon after extortion did your time at DEVGRU wrap up?
Oh, it wasn't till another year plus.
Okay.
Yeah. So I left in, I literally checked out the last day of November in 12, and then Nick Check was killed, I think, just that next week, where Ed Byers ended up being a Medal of Honor recipient out of that op. Great guys, very humble. And so that happened right after I left. Same troop, same squadron. They had reconstituted folks, and they were in that squadron, in that troop, as Adam and extortion. Yeah.
Thoughts? I've heard other people ask this question, so I'll ask this question because you were there. Why that squadron? I mean, why so many losses do you think that squadron has endured?
Only able to answer it with time. I couldn't have given you an answer then. I think it was the right leadership. They knew how to do that. That squadron CO is still in. I think he's a 2-star admiral. Great man, even a better wife. His wife's amazing. And then in the eternal aspect, I mean, I'm a chaplain, right? So how do you look at these things? You go back to Adam, and there's a verse, I think it's John 12:24, it says, unless the seed is buried and dies, there is no fruit that grows from it. And it is Jesus talking about himself, but it also can be applied to people. So, and actually I had this short discussion, I don't know if she'll remember it, with Adam's widow during extortion, that Adam's death created this search by the rest of that squadron. If we believe that God knows all, right? God knows what's going to happen in August. So Adam is secure eternally. He's good. He's better off than any of us right now. Of course, his family grieves. Grieving is natural, but they don't grieve as people without hope. His mom and dad, with another couple, established While We're Waiting. It's a wonderful ministry for families who've lost children of any age from any cause. It's worldwide now. It's amazing. So now you take all the eternal change that happened with 2 Troop, people becoming Christian, people returning back, like maybe a little prodigal story, maybe not to the extent of, the Luke parable, but it really is amazing to see that. And then you take a guy like Ed, who reconstituted and was the Medal of Honor recipient. Ed's a strong man of faith, the Catholic faith, and he prayed before every op. Why? So why him, right? And why did he lose his best friend right in front of him? I think these things are what we call the eternal aspects that we don't necessarily know. And, you know, even scripture says God has placed eternity into our heart. I think it's why people long to live long, because they don't know what's next and they strive to live long. But it's natural in every human being to ponder somehow what is beyond this. And from my tradition and of many of those in that year and a half, 2 years of loss in that one troop, I'd say it plays into that. Yeah. You know, one of the widows was, I remember her being at such peace when we were over there with doing some paperwork catch up with the Keiko call, the notification. And I'm just watching her, and I know her really well. And so I just circled back and I was like, I got to ask you, you know, you just lost your husband, the father of your kids. They were a beautiful marriage. And she said, you might not get it, but all the deployments he had before this, I would worry if he got killed, he would be eternally separated. This is the only deployment I had peace on. And that gives me peace today. Now, of course, she grieved as well. I mean, we're human, right? And grief is natural. I mean, Jesus knew he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. And he still wept when he saw the compassion among the people. So, sorry, I didn't mean to start preaching, but.
No, you're good. I think it's easier for people to see it in a situation like that peace in the midst of a situation that on face value requires a different response or requires just absolute devastation. I'm not saying any of these people weren't absolutely devastated. I'm sure they were, but as a Christian, I know what you're saying, and I've experienced it as well. Things can be absolutely shattered around you, but there's something inside of you that is just still that supersedes anything out here. And for amazing reasons, like you're sharing, people that see that can actually see that in other human beings, and I think they're drawn to that for a variety of reasons. But powerful. You wrap up at DEVGRU. Where do we go next?
So I got to be the first fully assigned chaplain at Naval Special Warfare Center. All SEALs know it as BUDS, but that's only one A school. They have two A schools. They have the SWIC pipeline, SEAL pipeline, and then numerous schools in the Advanced Training Command, because underneath the center you have Basic Training Command that has those two schools, and then Advanced Training Command. These are two O5 commands that has all the advanced schools. So you're the chaplain over all of that. There have been many chaplains there before, but they're always dual-hatted with headquarters. So I didn't have that push and pull. The community grew at that point. When I was leaving DEVGRU, we went from like 4 or 5 chaplains to like 14. I was slated for something else. Again, by the grace of God and a great detailer, he's like, you know, you've come off a bullet train, a lot of time away from family, and sending you to a ship would be just like back to back. And he's like, hey, you have an option to go to this new billet. And I was kind of pushing back. And then I'm on this conversation, and I look at my wife and I say, what do you think? She goes, that's a no-brainer, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. And but you know, it turned out to be my favorite tour in a lot of aspects. I think some of it's because I was home, you know, after being gone a lot. But the difference you make in, again, young people, and mainly the ones who didn't make it, the ones who made it through training, they don't need a lot of encouragement. They are just wired to make that kind of pain. Amazing to watch. But those folks that didn't make it, they're still, you know, valuable human beings, wonderful, brilliant, fit. I mean, you know, some of the best of the best. And of course, they didn't believe anything that was coming out of my mouth at first, because we had a lot of folks that would go over to be reclassified, and they would just use some buzzwords. You know, I think I'm going to hurt myself. And then if you have a brand new psychologist at the hospital that's learning the ropes, that's kind of a rubber stamp. It's not their fault. It's just these are very wise people trying to get out of their commitment in the Navy. Well, when I got there, I was like, I got to learn this process. And the chaplain over at the training support command is like, sure, come on over. I said, walk me through the process like I just quit. I just rang the bell. I'm a SEAL, a trite. What's that look like? Or a SWIC? Not as many, but they still, a SWIC schoolhouse was not easy either. And I love the fact, because I was at DEVGRU and they had both, I treated them both equal. So if I did something in the SEAL pipeline, it had to be mirrored in the SWIC pipeline, in my opinion, or it looked like favoritism. So because of good leadership in both of those schools, I was able to do that. Again, it goes down to people allowing you to do what you're supposed to do. But so I got this whole packet, and I went to the Ops Master Chief at BUDS specifically and said, put me on the checkout sheet and put me in the first slot. They got to see me first. He's like, why? I'm like, I'm going to take away your problem, me and the chaplain over at TSC. And we did. We showed them all the paperwork, how it worked from the main TSC in Pensacola and how they reclassed all these students across the Navy. You know, nuke school in South Carolina, you have to be brilliant to be a nuke. In fact, that submarine community might be tougher than the SEAL community in reality on each other. But they do it all at one time. So then you start filling out your sheet according to what you qualify for, and then you get jobs. And then some days it's just not a good day to be reclassified. There's no jobs, and you go chip paint on a ship. And so you have this guy who speaks 4 languages, was the captain of his lacrosse team at an Ivy League school, chipping paint. And you're like, that is a waste of time. But in the big picture, is it? I would just tell them, you're going to learn more about yourself in the next 6 to 12 months as you try to reclassify or decide what you want to do. But you have to embrace this suck that you're going into because you made a commitment, and here you are. It would make sense to me. You went to DLI, you know, we'd use you that, and, you know, I'm sure you're going to end up there eventually, but you can't have a major hiccup of just being upset with the system when you go out to sea and you're chipping paint. We have boatsmen who do that. And they're the true sailor, right? There's a whole deck department, but there's other people there that are kind of undesignated, and they're just trying to find their way. So we got it down to 0. No more rubber stamps getting out. We had great psychologists at the command, and so we use that as well. Like, hey, look, if they're using that line, send them back to us, and we'll let in a very experienced, and she went on to become the community manager for psychologists, and you know, amazing, humble, very quiet. You know, so she was always assessing, so it was really good. So we, you know, as a team, a group took it down to 0, and that was a win. I felt like I'd pull up to some gates and some guy would be like, "Hey, Japs, we thought you were lying to us." I'm like, "Who are you?" Because now they have hair and they don't look scared. They're like, "Oh no, I dropped out 6 months ago, you know, and you told us that it was going to be. I'm an MA now, and I'm going to try to get back into the pipeline because they can try again as long as they don't make E6." And so it was good to get some feedback. You know, I didn't see them everywhere, and a lot of them tried to get to a specific ship on the waterfront because the CEO of the center's wife was a surface warfare officer, and they figured if they got to her ship, they'd get back in time. And I was like, I don't think it works like that, but she's an amazing leader. So, and she did have the best morale on the waterfront, and she ended up being at the Naval Academy recently, and now she's in the Pentagon. She was 3-star, so she's quite good herself.
What was your, you mentioned working alongside the psychologist there at BUDS. What was the relationship with psychologists at DEVGRU? And I guess over your career, how much do the psychs and chaplains collaborate?
Again, I think this is built somewhat on personality, which isn't good, right? So I believe in the holistic approach, mind, body, and spirit. I know there's great value in that. So I sought it out. And even overseas in Japan, where they're in one location, still a good relationship, a give and take, a conversation. At DEVGRU, incredible. One was a little standoffish, but that was his personality. But the rest of the team was just really good. Traveled a lot with one of them for different things that we got recalled for to go places. So I had a built-in psychologist during travel, which was helpful for me. And then at the White House is where I learned something, and then followed on my last tour with another guy who's been in NSW a lot. He's amazing. You call him an operational psychologist. Mm-hmm. But then when I was around neuropsychologists, I mean, that opened my aperture even wider. I was like, wow, that's incredible. And so I had two when I was at the White House. I had three total. Two were neuropsychs. And the last one that was there with me as I left, also a Gator grad from UF. It was interesting. She was 100% on screening boards. It was amazing. So she wouldn't talk till the end because she didn't want to skew anybody. And we would all like share feedback on a board because we were used on major hires at the White House. They do you don't just go there, you get screened for there as well. And she was spot on. Even one that we kind of fought her on, and they came in, didn't last a year. And for the very reason she said, it was like, wow. And so it was good to, I was always blessed with that. Even on the West Coast, not necessarily at Bud's, though while I was there, you still interact with the chaplains over at Group 1 and headquarters and the psychologists because it's a team. And we had one that was, he wasn't like throwing it in your face, but he was an atheist. He didn't believe in the spiritual part, but he kind of got it that other people did. And he referred to me more than some of my psychologists who were actually people of faith. And so it was neat. And I would talk people into going to see them. I said, just go interview them. I know the stigma, unfortunately, I think is a lot of it's gone away. I'm glad. But, I was like, go interview them. I know they outrank you most of the time, but go in there, ask them what their modality is, what their specialty is. Talk to them. And if you don't have a connection, ask them for someone else. If they get upset, you don't want them anyways, because then it's about them. And it's the same thing with chaplains. There's people that might come to me and it's kind of like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think you're feeling comfortable. Would you like me to get someone else for you? And you just find one of your buddies or someone close by and let it work. And again, if it's about them, you don't care. You care they get their help. You don't care if it's you when you actually did help them by getting them to the right person. Right. So sometimes I'd go in with the person when I'd refer to psychologists and say, I'll go sit with you and let's talk. And they would forget some questions. So I would ask, and they would almost 100% within 10 minutes, they look over me and go, I'm good. And I would leave. And, never follow up. I don't need to know. I know they're getting good care. And that's now sometimes we had to work together and do some follow up with permission, right? We're working together, but you just trust people with people And I would tell leaders that too. How can you refer to your care providers if you do not know them yourself? As a leader, you should check in and get to know all of your resources so that when you're in a staff meeting, you can pick it apart if you need to, or refer to if need to. So again, that's some training from one of my first COs. You speak truth to power, and it's always about the others. It's like, why are there such great coaches? Because the great coaches, it's about the players, and the players buy in and they go compete. So it's the same thing.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I work a lot with couples, and it's something I've pounded into their head as well. It's like, hey, we've got these tools for you to use. You're not gonna reach for these tools in times of crisis when I'm, not in your home or it's not in session. So we got to get comfortable with these tools now. We got to get familiar with them so that you feel comfortable grabbing, this communication tool or this conflict resolution tool in times when you actually need it. That's great.
Or work ahead of time and get to the left of bang. Stay to the left of incidents and bangs and hardships, because life's going to give them to you anyways. So you might as well not create more.
Right. Yeah. I know we're getting close on time, but I want to not jump ahead. But you mentioned the White House. What was was that something you wanted and you screened for, or how did that materialize? And what was that billet like?
So I was still in San Diego at 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, and I was talking to one of my former bosses, a Navy SEAL, and he's like, "Hey, you want to come work for me at the White House?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Well, why not?" And I'm like, I want to be, I'm a chaplain. I don't want to be anything else. And he goes, "Well, you'd be a chaplain, silly." And I'm like, "Well, I didn't know we had chaplains there." And he said, "No, it's a screening process. I can't ask for you," because he had already asked for me for a deployment. So he couldn't literally go back and do a by name. So it took a while, and the process worked, and I went and screened. You're really at the White House military office. So that's your, I don't know if the office is still there, because the headquarters was in the East Wing, and I don't know how much got torn down with all this recent. I don't watch the news. People talk to me. But so you're taking care of the White House military office. And then because you're there and your office is either in the Eisenhower Executive Office Building or over the new Executive Office Building, which I don't want to call it new, it was built in 65, just like I was born in 65. And there's nothing new about me, but they call it new. But because your proximity to the executive office of the president, right, EOP folks, they know you're there and they can utilize you if they want to. And same with Secret Service, even though they have some chaplains in Secret Service, and then some of the other little things that exist there. And so you do have some relationships there, but that's not your primary, and that's only if they seek you out. You'd be dismissed if you started seeking them out, because they keep a good eye on it. It's another assignment where you don't talk about being there while you're there, but you can talk about it after you leave. Yeah, we had, I mentioned earlier, so Camp David falls under that. Air Force One, which is Presidential Airlift Group or Command. And then you got HMX, Marine One, White House Communications Agency, and White House Trans. So I had a deputy. I was the deputy first for 11 months. Then I moved up to be the main. Then I had a deputy from the Air Force, incredible chaplain. Both the guys I were with were Air Force, which was kind of cool. And one had helped out with extortion. And I got to thank him at my screening panel. I had never, he's the last guy I thanked. He was downrange in theater and actually went to the site. And so I said, "I know you don't want to talk about it, but even if I don't screen here, I can say thank you." And so that was one of the best parts of being there, was finally thanking everybody on my list. But yeah, so my deputy would be house, mainly covered White House communication agencies, large, and then we would all take turns taking care of the others. And then it kind of shifted toward the end where I was, I'd go out to Air Force One, about once a week, once every other week, which was fun because, again, where did I start? In the Air Force. And now I'm waxing a plane with a bunch of airmen. They looked at me weird because they're like, "This commander is waxing a plane." And they're like, "Why are you out here?" I'm like, "Because you're out here and we're having conversations." So the good part about my 05 jobs is I still got to really be involved in the muddy, right? In the day-to-day deck plate still. I had to lead and I had to build briefs and I had to do all kinds of other things, but I still had an outlet to, be out with service members and by extension, sometimes their families and stuff like that. But yeah, so especially in the time where I had one leader just wasn't great, and that's another lesson God taught me. But it's being out at Air Force One was like respite. It was like self-care actually in some aspects, but yeah, it was a unique experience. Again, the majority of people there are amazing. They're there for the right reason. No one knows it. They're quiet, and some of them are civilians, been there for a long time, and they're about the mission. And when people are, that's the fun part. When people are about the mission and not about themselves, it really, really is fun. But the chaplain was never really not speaking down the chaplains previous to me, because a lot of it's built off personality and relationship with leaders, right? Well, I finally had someone ask me, where are you going to be in this event? And I'm like, I don't know. That's never a good answer, because, you know, in the military, everything's spelled out. I knew what I was doing, and I knew I could do it with this person. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know? And I'm like, well, it depends on the mood of the boss, if I'm going to be with the boss or the deputy. And he looked at me and I said, I bet you know exactly where you are, aren't you? And he goes, yeah. I said, it's codified in some instruction, right? He goes, exactly. And I said, so are you telling me I need to do that? And he goes, yeah, do that. I said, are you telling me I have to? I wanted him to, because now I have permission. And so I spent a good time codifying the billet. I'm not sure it held on. I had some people call me about a year or two after I left and like, did you get a relief? I'm like, oh, stop, please don't tell me that. But they were being facetious, I think. But yeah, setting that up for what right looked like. And I feel like that's, in a lot of ways, that was my career. DEVGRU was a little different. I stepped in off of being the second guy. The guy built a great foundation, and I was just able to build the rooms and stuff around it with good teammate and great RPs. I got to give them credit as well at all my stops. And those are, you know, they work, we call it a religious ministry team. We work together. And that's the thing we lacked at the White House. We had no enlisted support. Yeah. And I missed that part of being a true team. But my deputy and I kind of did that. I mean, he was just an amazing guy. He's still in as well. Both of those Air Force guys are still in, doing well. But yeah.
What's something that, if you can say, I'll give you two options. What's something we wouldn't know that would just be kind of unique about Air Force One, and or if you can't discuss that, which I understand, what about the air crew?
Again, great professionals. A lot of them want to stay there. They could go promote easier in the Air Force. But because of the mission, and then sometimes it just plays into your family can stay still. If they can stay there, they try. He goes back to DEVGRU, the enlisted guys there, they stay there, and they have a decent quality of life for family, going to the same schools, you know, yeah. Same church. You're not doing all that changing. Yeah, just super professional and detailed. Even the pilot, the main pilot knows he's never going to, I mean, when they go down the pilot route, unless it changes, they know they're never going to be a general. They're going to tap out at colonel and leave as, you know, Air Force One's pilot. But again, quality of life, mission, making a difference. A lot of the things that people don't know about. There's a reason you have such a high clearance there. And there's a reason that there's a mission underneath. But it's again, just quality professionals and an amazing plane. That thing is over 30 years old. It looks brand new every day. My wife got to see it, and like with two sitting in the hangar, which is incredible. But I could never get her to get on it. You know, I tried every way to get her a tour for that, but it's pretty amazing just to look at such an old plane that looks brand new.
Yeah,
and those maintainers are great. Those airmen are just like in anything. You take Marine One, the same thing. Those Marines that work that mission are incredible. The CVs that and the Marines, you know, at Camp David, again, professional. The multiple branches at communications agency. That's all branches. You know, I guess, you know, working at at DEVGRU and at the White House, you just get kind of spoiled with kind of the efficiency and the incredible dedication to the mission. Because you don't have to go there, you know. They can screen you, you can say no. So, but if you say yes, you're agreeing to work. And so, yeah, that part, again, looking back, it's easy to see a lot of the positive. I mean, there's some hard times during there. We had COVID, we had the George Floyd stuff in DC and how it was shut down.
What years were you at the White House?
So I got there in August of 18 and left in June of 21. So you're in 2.5 years of Trump and the first 6 months of the Biden administration. So I was there for inauguration, the flip of the White House, the unsung heroes that move furniture and take care of the stuff that, again, no one ever sees, that live in DC, been born and raised in DC. Amazing. There was this group of men I'd go talk to every once in a while, just if I needed, again, a little bit of encouragement, a pick me up. They were like almost ministering to me. Same with the Presidential Food Service, which is mainly Navy cooks who in some commands are looked down on. You know, you're a cook in a ship or something. You should never look down on a cook. They cook your food. But the key is they're amazing chefs, great professional organization. I put on a little weight before I could figure out I should not be eating what they cook all the time. So I had to get that back off. But yeah. There's a lot of good, a lot of tough lessons to learn, some late hours, some early mornings. Sometimes your own branch doesn't understand what you're doing. The other branches value that position way more than the Navy does. And I do not know why, but it's I wouldn't change anything about my military time. So that's not in a complaint mode. It's exactly where I was supposed to be at every assignment. And some of them were really weird, some were short. And then I spent a lot of time in NSW and never asked to stay. You don't ask to stay. Everyone thought, how did you get to do that? I'm like, you don't get to do that. They ask you to stay, and then the chaplain corps has to agree to it. So it worked. But sometimes leaders leave the chaplain corps, and the new pharaoh doesn't know anything about Joseph. Some people will get that.
Yeah. What are we up to now, and when did you get out? We'll wrap this up, and then I got a couple other questions for you before we get out of here.
Sure. So leaving the White House, I was going to retire out of there. I thought about it, and in fact, some of the chaplain corps thought I was, and I was like, no, I want a military experience before I leave. I wore a suit 4 days a week. It was good, but I wanted to finish kind of where I started. And the detailer offered me actually more options than I'd ever been offered, which was strange. So he was very kind. So I picked Parris Island. So that's Marine Corps Recruit Depot. Yeah. I love training commands. I love to be with Marines. When Marines are doing it right, it's beautiful. When it's off, it's ugly, but when they're doing it right. And wow, I just was blessed with incredible. I reported in the same time as my regimental CO. Great man, great leader. I loved watching how he led and how his wheels turned. So I got to see that. Great Sergeant Major. I'm going to his retirement in March. Can't wait to get out to see him. And his retirement officer is that retired colonel. So the team will be back together for a moment. But even our battalion COs and sergeants major, they'll get me if I say that wrong. It was just a good ending for me. I supervised 5 chaplains, and we had I think 3 other chaplains, because you have the base and you have headquarters, but then you have the regiment. The regiment is where all the recruits are. But I inherited just a great group of chaplains who wanted to learn. See, when I first got there, I think 3 or 4 of them are all first tour. None of them pushed back, but none of them were like pushovers either. They're have you ever led someone that's smarter than you? Yeah, I had a few of those, and it was really fun because it's like they're smarter than me. This is great. and they were first tours, and they're going to do amazing stuff. Still in touch with some of them, but they were a little micromanaged before by the guy I relieved, because they were afraid to do anything when I got there. And I'm like, you're the chaplain. It's your battalion, not you. Don't work for me. And I think I learned that from very early from a good supervisor chaplain. Chaplains don't work for chaplains. We work for our COs. We have professional, respectful relationships with our chaplains. It's called a chain of influence versus a chain of command. And just work collegial, recognize that, hey, that's my supervisory chaplain. Some would ask for things they can't ask because it's not written. But I work for one goes, hey guys, I'd love to get some of your reports, but I can't make you turn them in because it's not in an instruction. So I had some really good examples, and I hope I was for these first tour chaplains, because, and a couple of them were not first tour, but yeah, they were hard workers, and it was fun. We had a good time, and it was just a good way to go out. And then I messed up. My first CO was now the Commandant of the Marine Corps. So when I had him when he was not the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and so in the system you can write an email if you're in the Marines to anybody in the Marine Corps. And I looked him up, and I was like, it'd be kind of cool if he'd come to my retirement, because I checked in with him, I could check out with him. And so I wrote him, and I thought, yeah, he's busy, he'll say no. I went to a meeting, come back, and it's like he's copied everyone on the staff. Whatever I have on the date has been canceled. Be happy to be there. And I'm like, uh-oh. So I had to run all over base and say, the Commandant's coming for my retirement. And especially at a recruit depot where everything's perfect. I mean, drill, ceremony, everything is perfect. Those drill instructors are just incredible human beings. The hours they put in, their families, the sacrifice from families, it's harder, I think, than deployments, because you're there, but you're not there. Especially their first cycles are just as good. So looking back, as we end this part, I was so blessed in every assignment. Everybody likes to highlight some of the Gucci ones, but every one of them was just full of amazing servant people who raised their hand. No one was drafted, said, I want to go serve my country. I love the diversity. I learned so much about all kinds of other cultures, other things. You learn about yourself, when you're in these environments. Doing ministry in that culture, multicultural aspect is amazing. So yeah, it was. I look back, I'm grateful. There were some hard lessons, but even the hard lessons and the difficult times, maybe even some attacks, they're all part of the process. So I look back fondly, and I still. I have two young former Marine enlisted guys who are in the chaplain candidate program that, help write a letter. I didn't get them in, but I did write a letter for them, and they'll tell me when they've gone to training, hey, I was out on a ship today. And so, I still pray for the chaplain corps, because there's people that need them, and I pray for them, because it's not an easy life, and their families, because you do give up a lot when you go serve, but that, and that's part of it. So I hope I did that well for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I got the chance to see my brother-in-law. I actually had two brother-in-laws that were in the Marine Corps. One for 20 plus years. The other one, I think he just did the standard 4. But I got to see the younger one graduate from Parris Island, and that was
nice.
That was special. Just the efficiency. Everything top to bottom. I'd never seen anything like it. And it was just super, super impressive. But also, as an American, seeing these kids, I want to say I was closer to upper 30s when I went, but seeing that, it was awesome. So I can imagine being there and seeing those kids throughout your time there was pretty special, especially as you're wrapping up a career, kind of coming back to the basics, so to speak.
It was a fun place to step off to the next context, and that was fun.
Robert, I appreciate your time. What have you been doing lately? How are you serving? I know you're a part of a couple different organizations. I want to give you the opportunity to plug those.
So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm since day one of retirement, been supporting the Navy SEAL Museum. I know it sounds weird to be a chaplain for a museum. I don't go down and minister to artifacts or any pieces. They actually have some programs underneath, and we do a swim out, and we're getting ready to do the 40th anniversary of the museum and a muster. So a muster is when everybody in the community comes in. SWIC comes well, and sea wolves. I learned that in Vietnam, guys. So you do a lot of ministry, and you do a lot of quiet things through some phone calls and plugging people in different places, and just helping, and as you learn and as they call and ask you to do stuff. But also through Cross the Divide, I don't get paid from any of these. So Cross the Divide is a retired Navy chaplain who does a lot of outdoor adventure and wanted to look into doing marriage stuff for Naval Special Warfare, but couldn't get it off. And then a retired chaplain was like, you need to get Bradshaw. So we introduced it, and we actually launched it this past year. We did a marriage enrichment retreat for retired SEAL and SWIC couples in Idaho. And I have a back-to-back plan for next summer. So we'll do 2 in a row next summer already with Protectors Peak, a great first responder, former police chief, allows us to use the facility, and they feed us. It's amazing. So that's another organization very involved in church as well. And I wanted to be a part of this community. We have flexibility, have good time to just really be with my wife's parents. My father-in-law's birthday was yesterday, 85, and my mother-in-law's will be in 2 weeks, so she'll be 84. So getting some time, we missed a lot of that, and I get to see my family. So I have a lot of flexibility. I love the water. So as you catch a wave when God's always moving, right? And so you got to be ready. You got to be on your board, and you got to catch it or you get toppled. So for me, I'm in the water. I'm on my board, and I think God's given me a time of, we're sitting in the lulls of some of that aspect before I think He turned something on with some organization or some team. I don't care what it's called, and I don't care what it looks like. If it's people trying to get to a certain direction that wants that kind of support and care and truth to power, and is going to love and take care of your people, I don't even care if it has a title. Never really cared about that. I retired in my camis, so I didn't have ribbons and all that stuff. I had a ton because of who I was with and where I went, but it's never about that kind of stuff. I retired in a working uniform on purpose, and so I don't know. I don't know how long the season of waiting and pruning. As you look biblically, a lot of people might think that's a painful process, but sometimes it's a healthy process of just waiting on God's timing. And so we're not quite at 3 years. I've supported other retreats, so I'm not passive and just sitting, but being very intentional and selective, and believing that God has something that's going to kind of ground some teeth into it. I do enjoy that the things that I am doing, my wife and I get to do it together, because I miss a lot of time with her. So she was part of the marriage retreat lead as well. So, 40 plus years of marriage in this environment and that we went through, she has some things she can really share with both sides of the couple. Hey, how you do it right and how you survive it, and so that's fun to do. And so we'll see. And if it ends up being just this, that's fine too. I am content with where God has me, and I want to trust Him in the timing. I don't want to push. I'm highly capable of that, and I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want King Saul when God's telling me I don't need King Saul. That didn't work out for Israel quite well in that aspect. But so yeah.
Well,
and before you go, and if other people don't know who might listen to this, I really appreciate what you do and support of the community through Soft Network that you started and run, because I know it's being utilized. I know for a fact that there are organizations that have said, do I have anyone in Texas? Do I have anyone in Colorado? Do I have anyone in this state? And they're able to plug into your network and support people. And so kudos to you. And it's an honor to be on here with you And I keep praying for the success of the SOF network, because it's making a difference in people's lives.
Well, I appreciate that. And I, like you, have to defer to God because I'm not from the community. I'm not a veteran. And through, roundabout circumstances, this is who he wanted me to work with, starting down in Wilmington, and now I'm down in Tampa. But yeah, so nothing I've definitely done. I'm kind of like you. I'm on the wave and enjoying the ride thus far, but can't take much credit for any of it. But Robert, I really appreciate your time. We're so close. At some point, let's get together. We'll have some lunch and catch up. But I'll make sure any contacts or any organizations you're a part of, we'll make sure to put in the show notes. And I just want to thank you again so much for the 2 times we get to sit down and do this.
Yeah, it's an honor. I appreciate it. I've actually kind of warmed up. Don't drink iced coffee in a cold room, because I was shaking at the beginning. Everyone probably thought I was nervous, but I'm just cold. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. And please share this content with your networks.